All right, welcome to another edition of Ask Anthony Live. Remember, if you have a problem you just can't solve, you can always email me at askanthony@firstcoastnews.com. Today, I want to talk about a story that a lot of you have been talking about on social media, especially those of you who live in Fernandina Beach. So last week, I brought to you the story of an 84-year-old woman, an elderly woman, a widow in Fernandina Beach, who went to a skincare store located on Center Street down there in downtown Fernandina Beach. She went into the store thinking she was just going to get a $25 facial, but she walked out with a $26,000 charge on her credit card, something she didn't discover until she got home. And her daughter was actually the one who emailed me about this because her mom was so embarrassed and ashamed of what happened. She didn't want to tell anyone. And her daughter has been trying to get refunds for her mother over and over again, but nothing's happened. She's only gotten a $4,500 refund out of $26,000, and she wants all of the money back, but the store is basically saying, sorry, no refunds. So to tell you a little bit more about this company, it's called B&Co. Once again, this woman, Catherine Taylor, was charged $26,000. Producer Andy, go ahead and let's play the story from last week to let people know what happened. $26,000 is a lot of money.
When she saw the receipt, she was devastated. She didn't want to tell anybody.
What's inside these two bags isn't just skincare, it's a costly mistake that left Catherine Taylor feeling humiliated, heartbroken, and nearly broke.
I was more embarrassed. I didn't tell anybody. My sister's across the street. I didn't tell her. Didn't tell anybody.
Taylor bought the products more than a year ago. Jackie Gattoni is Taylor's daughter and recently made the discovery. She feels her 84-year-old mother, who lives off of Social Security, was taken advantage of by employees at a store called B&Co on Center Street in Fernandina Beach. After finding out what happened, she tried to return the products herself.
I have made repeated attempts to get her money back. Phone calls. I've gone into the store several times.
But she's had no luck getting all the money back. Her mother was able to get a refund of about $4,500 to her credit card the day after it happened.
They said, anything else we refund you is really going to hurt the salesperson's family. It's like taking food out of their mouths.
Gattoni gave me a copy of the receipt. Her mother was charged $9,000 for a product called Genesis Z, $5,500 for something called Sapphire X, and a total of $10,000 for a, quote, phylothermal collection. I Googled Genesis Z and Sapphire X and learned these are medical devices that claim to use light therapy to tighten and smooth skin. Sure enough, they cost thousands of dollars, but Taylor claims she was not aware of the prices, nor did she agree to buy them.
Well, I was being shifted around, and I didn't realize, what was happening.
Gattoni contacted Fernandina Beach Police. In a police report obtained by Gattoni, several people, mostly over the age of 60, all had similar allegations of aggressive and deceptive sales tactics. A couple on vacation from Massachusetts told police they were offered a product sample by an employee and taken inside the store. They had product applied to their faces and were charged approximately $2,500. A 74-year-old woman from Georgia told police she purchased a wand and some creams and was charged more than $8,000. I emailed Police Chief Jeff Tambasco, who responded, quote, "We have received multiple complaints and our Criminal Investigations Division is investigating them."
I have never seen any prices. There is just now a large sign that says no refunds.
After doing more research, there are more B&Co stores across the country with similar complaints online. The website says all B&Co retail locations are independently owned and managed. And since most of Taylor's products were unopened, I tried to return the products to the Fernandina Beach store on her behalf for a full refund. This employee, who didn't identify himself, took me into the store to talk more about the issue. He said he was under the impression Taylor got all of her money back. He told me the employees are transparent about the sales process and that there is a sign at the front counter that mentions all sales are final and there are no refunds. I brought the bags back to Gattoni and her mother.
I look at my mother and I see how upset that she was that this happened to her. I mean, she felt stupid. You're not stupid.
Story there and exactly what happened to Mrs. Taylor. Police are still investigating this situation. I just spoke with the chief yesterday. He tells me that they're still looking into the matter, but he will let me know as soon as anything develops. So to talk a little bit more about what you can do as a customer if something like this happens to you, I want to bring in now Kevin Brasler, executive editor of checkbook.org, a nonprofit focused on helping consumers make smarter decisions. Kevin, thank you for joining us. Did I say your last name correctly?
You did, Anthony.
Okay, perfect. All right, thank you, Kevin, so much for being here with us. So my first question for you, when it comes to customers making large purchases, let's talk about what are the best practices to avoid being overcharged or mischarged at the register.
Well, I mean, the first thing you can do is check your receipt, make sure that you weren't overcharged, and if you were, ask the retailer to immediately correct it. But we often advise people use credit cards, not just for major purchases, but for most purchases, so long as doing so won't get them carried away with their spending. And the reason is that when you use a credit card, there's a federal law that protects you against fraud. It protects you against overcharges. And really, most importantly, it protects you in case something that you've ordered wasn't delivered at all, or wasn't delivered as promised, or you're just unsatisfactory with the product or service and you try to work it out with the retailer and they wouldn't budge. They wouldn't give you your money back or let you return the item. The federal law says basically if you've bought something using credit, that once you've gotten the bill, you have 60 days to dispute that charge with your credit card company, and the credit card company has to investigate the dispute and decide whether you're in the wrong or the retailer's in the wrong. And during that time frame, they'll freeze that charge on your credit card. You don't have to pay any interest on it. You don't have to pay for that charge itself.
And what should someone do, Kevin, if they notice on their receipt that there is an error after the purchase that they just made?
Yeah, if it's a fraudulent charge, definitely let the credit card company know right away. They have to deal with those. They have to eat those charges, basically, and they might issue a new credit card number. If it's just a purchase that you're not satisfied with, or it's an overcharge, start by dealing with the retailer or seller itself. Ask them to put it right. If they won't budge, warn them. Say, look, I'm going to dispute this charge. I'm going to seek what's called a chargeback. Sometimes just using that threat is enough to get them to act, because when these chargebacks occur, these businesses, the money essentially gets pulled out of their account and goes back into your credit card bank's account. But they also get hit with chargeback fees, which range from $75 to $150. And so, credit card companies have a big stick here in terms of keeping these companies in line. If there's a problem and they investigate and find that the consumers are in favor, it costs the business not just that money, but extra money on top of it. And also we find that these credit card companies are far more likely to side with you, the consumer, especially if you have a good case. You can say, look, I'm just not happy with this, and I tried to work it out with this company and they wouldn't budge. Or this company has a history of problems going back for years, and therefore, there's clear evidence to show here that I can show you, the credit card company, of these problems. They're very likely to rule in your favor. They almost always rule in consumers' favors in these disputes.
So, Kevin, an issue with Mrs. Taylor in my story, she made the purchase more than a year ago. And because she was embarrassed and ashamed, she didn't tell anyone. Her children didn't discover this until several months later. And a question that I always get, because even with this story, a lot of viewers have asked me, why didn't she just dispute it with her credit card company and get the money back? How long do you actually have to file a chargeback with your credit card company?
It's an excellent question. The short answer is the law says you have 60 days, but Visa and MasterCard rules give you a longer period of time than that. Basically, when companies if they want to accept Visa and MasterCard as credit card payments as payment, they have to agree to a separate set of rules set by MasterCard, Visa, and even American Express. And so you have more time than required by law to dispute these charges. Even then, though, we find that often consumers, if they don't realize there's a problem with the purchase, and they don't discover it's defective until 6 months later, a year later, or there's some problem where they can document, look, I couldn't have known sooner about this problem until now, until 6 months later, a year later, the credit card companies often still do side with consumers and issue chargebacks. I think in this case, fortunately, she waited a year, and this is a common problem with fraud and scams: is that people are embarrassed and they don't speak up right away. And really, I've been doing this for 30 years, and every week hear from somebody who's been scammed and are just utterly embarrassed that they fell for it. And what they don't realize is that these salespeople and scam artists are very sophisticated at convincing us to do things we wouldn't otherwise want to do, and they shouldn't be embarrassed. They should try to deal with the problem right away. In this case, I think because this company has a history of problems, especially abusing older customers, she has a case to make to say, look, I was embarrassed. It took me a year to do this. Here's all this evidence I've uncovered, or that you, Andrew, have uncovered about this company and how it's been, mistreating its customers. I think maybe I should still get a chargeback.
And can you dispute charges even if you're just unhappy, if they're unsatisfactory, not necessarily incorrect?
You can. And so this is very important. If you have a plumber or heating or an air conditioning technician in your home, they've done work, the work wasn't done right. If you've taken your car to a repair shop and you drove away and realized they didn't fix the problem, they weren't willing to deal with it, if you pay with a credit card, you can dispute that charge. You can say, look, I'm dissatisfied with the service I got. I tried to work it out with the shop and they won't do anything for me. You will 9+ times out of 10 get your money back. It's only fair, though, to try to work it out with that company first. But if they won't budge, you can ask for this chargeback. I'll say one more thing on this. If you've paid using a debit card, you can still dispute transactions you've made with the debit card. If the transaction went through Visa or MasterCard's payment system, and most do, there are still rules in place to where retailers, vendors, they have to abide by the same types of contracts they do for credit card purchases. But using a debit card isn't as safe as a credit card. The risks are different because the money's already been pulled out of your account. With a credit card purchase, that amount is frozen on your bill. You're not responsible for it. And even if you've paid that bill with that charge on it, you want to dispute it, you can. They'll still freeze that charge and then later on decide whether you have to pay it or not. With a debit card purchase, the money's just gone. They may return it, but in the meantime, you may be short on making a mortgage payment or something like that. And if fraud has occurred, it's a really big problem.
Kevin, I'm so happy you mentioned about the situation with debit cards, because that is definitely a question I've had myself about what you can do when it comes to disputing those charges. And you've already kind of touched on this, but what is the best evidence that you can provide when filing a chargeback?
Yeah, I will say that often people have trouble getting chargebacks when the retailers said things like all sales final, right? That we won't let you return anything. Although we have seen credit card companies still issue chargebacks if you can prove that what they sold me, it was defective, it didn't work, or it wasn't what they promised, and that's key. The Federal Credit Billing Act clearly says, look, if somebody doesn't deliver something to you that you've paid for, or what they delivered wasn't as promised, you have a clear right to a chargeback at that point. I think in this case, basically what happened, as far as I can tell, is she was just grossly overcharged for the products that this company was selling. I mean, $26,000, no reasonable person or jury would say, okay, that's a reasonable fee to pay for cosmetics, right? And so clearly what this company is doing is they're using the hard sell, probably, from what I can tell, using the hard sell and using deceptive selling practices to victimize older adults who may not even know what they're paying for, or how much they're paying until they've left the store.
Kevin, you have done an excellent job giving us some advice and answering my questions. Before we wrap things up, is there anything else that you would like to add, anything that you really stress to consumers that they need to know when it comes to these type of situations?
Well, again, I think credit card is usually the best way to pay. If you don't have one, be very, very careful about using these peer-to-peer payment apps. So, Zelle and Cash App and things like that. Really, you have almost no recourse with most of those transactions if something goes wrong. We've even found consumers who accidentally paid the wrong person for a product or service, or just to pay them back for a dinner tab or something, and it's up to the goodwill of the person who accidentally paid to send the money back. It's a big, big red flag if a business or someone else you encounter wants payment through one of these peer-to-peer payment apps, or if they want Bitcoin, or if they want gift cards or something like that. That's because the transaction is just very difficult to trace. It's very difficult to get your money back if something's gone wrong. With a credit card, you have these certain protections in place, and that's why it's safer.
All right, Kevin Brasler, executive editor of checkbook.org. Thank you so much for joining us today and giving us this excellent advice. And as I mentioned, this is a story that I am going to keep following. Miss Taylor's story, we are hoping to get some resolve for her, get her money back, and also hope that the store will be held accountable for what happened to her. Like I mentioned, Fernandina Beach Police, they are still investigating because they have received multiple complaints about this store. And as soon as anything develops, I'll be sure to keep you updated. So remember, if you have a problem you just can't solve, you can always email me at askanthony@firstcoastnews.com. Also, if this has happened to you, be sure to email me. Once again, askanthony@firstcoastnews.com.